My wife cheated on me with her boss, then stole $250, $0 from our joint account to run away with him. Now she's claiming half our house and my inheritance in a bitter courtroom battle I never saw coming. I never thought I'd be that guy, someone who ends up betrayed, humiliated, and fighting for everything I worked so hard to build. But here I am, and honestly I still can't believe how it all unraveled so fast. The most shocking part, it wasn't just the affair. It was the fact that she stole $250, $0 from our joint account to run off with her boss, Marcus. Yeah, Marcus, the guy she claimed was just a friend at first, but I saw the signs and I ignored them. I always thought I knew my wife, Lisa, better than anyone else. Turns out I didn't know her at all. We had been together for about 8 years, married for 5. I thought we had a solid life, good jobs, a nice house, a future I thought we were building together. Lisa was beautiful, confident, and smart. She worked as a marketing executive at a pretty big firm downtown. I was a project manager at a construction company. We didn't have a lot of money, but we managed. We had a modest but comfortable life, and I thought she was happy, or at least that's what I convinced myself. It all started about 2 months ago. I noticed she was acting a little different, less affectionate, more secretive about her phone. She'd hide her messages, dismiss my questions with a quick laugh or a sharp remark. I figured she was just stressed at work, or maybe she was tired of me. We'd been arguing a bit more lately, but I didn't think it was anything serious. I was busy with work, trying to save for a vacation we'd planned, and I thought maybe she was just overwhelmed. Then came the night I caught her. It wasn't planned, and honestly, I still feel sick thinking about how I stumbled onto the truth. I was working late at the office, but I decided to swing by her company's parking lot because I'd forgotten my phone charger. I saw her car parked near the back, and I figured she might be still at her desk. But as I approached, I saw her get into a different car, one I did recognize. It was a sleek black sedan, and she looked different. She looked happy, excited even. I felt a strange knot form in my stomach, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I followed her from a distance, pretending to be casual. She pulled into a restaurant I'd never been to before. I parked nearby, trying to listen for any clues. I didn't hear much, but I saw her meet with someone, tall, well-dressed, and clearly someone she knew well. I recognized Marcus, her boss, the same Marcus who'd been promoting her at work and taking her out for business dinners. I'd seen the way she looked at him sometimes, like she was trying to hide her feelings but couldn't quite manage it. That night I didn't confront her. I just watched from a distance as they shared drinks, laughed, and leaned into each other. My heart sank. I knew then, without a doubt, Lisa was cheating on me. And it wasn't just the sex, though I was sure they'd already crossed that line. It was the way she looked at him, the way she seemed to forget I existed. It was like I was invisible to her. That realization hit me hard, but I knew I had to do something. The next day I went through her phone while she was at work. I know people say that's wrong, but I was desperate, and what I found confirmed everything. Texts, pictures, even a few explicit messages. She was having sex with Marcus. I saw her tell him how much she hated the lies but loved the excitement of sneaking around. She said she wanted to leave me for him, that she was tired of pretending to be happy. My stomach turned. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I confronted her that night. I waited until she got home and I laid everything out. Her face twisted into a sneer and she told me I was overreacting. She said it was just sex, that Marcus was just a way to blow off steam, and that I was insecure. She told me I was imagining things, that she loved me and only me, that I was paranoid. But I wasn't buying it, not anymore. I knew the truth, plain and simple. She had been cheating on me with her boss, Marcus, for months, and she'd stolen $250,000 from our joint account to run away with him. The emotional impact hit me like a freight train. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious all at once. How could she do this? How could she lie so blatantly? And the money, $250,000 gone. Just like that, wiped out from our savings, our future. I was left standing there, feeling like I'd been punched in the chest, trying to process what was happening. I'd always thought she was my partner, my best friend, the woman I'd wake up next to every morning. And now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish bitch who didn't care about me or our life together. I spent the next few days in a fog trying to figure out what to do. I felt so stupid for not seeing it earlier, for trusting her so blindly. I was angry at her, at Marcus, at myself. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew I had to fight back. She thought she could just take the money, run off, and leave me holding the bag. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it that easily. I decided I'd fight for what's mine. My house, my inheritance, everything I'd worked for. I wasn't just going to roll over and let her walk away with my life savings and my home. I started digging into the bank statements, legal options, anything I could find. I knew she'd try to spin it, lie her way out of it, but I also knew I had evidence. And I wasn't afraid to use it. She's a manipulative, bitter woman, and I could see her trying to turn the tables, claiming I was the bad guy. But I also knew she'd push me to the edge. The betrayal, the theft, the lies, they all added up. I was done being the good guy. It was time for revenge, and I was determined to get it. After the initial shock started to wear off, I knew I had to get serious. I couldn't just sit around feeling sorry for myself or expecting her to come clean on her own. No, I had to take control of the situation, figure out my options, and prepare for what was coming. I started by pulling every bank statement, every transaction, and every piece of evidence I could find. The amount she stole, $250, was a lot, but I wasn't about to let it slide. I knew she'd try to spin it, deny everything, and probably lie her way out of it. That's what she was good at: lying, manipulating, twisting facts until they suited her. The first thing I did was call a lawyer. I didn't want to jump into anything without knowing my rights, especially since she was claiming half the house and her share of my inheritance. I told the lawyer everything: the affair, the theft, her attempts to deny it all. The lawyer listened patiently and then told me to gather all the evidence I had: bank statements, texts, emails, anything that proved she'd been planning this for a while. I did just that, compiling a folder of everything I'd found. I also made copies of the bank transactions, especially those that showed the withdrawal of $250, $0. It was clear she'd transferred the money into her personal account to fund her escape. Meanwhile, Lisa was still denying everything. She kept insisting she was innocent, that I was overreacting, that Marcus was just a friend and nothing more. She'd even gone as far as to call me paranoid, saying I was insecure and jealous. She threw a fit when I confronted her, screaming that I was ruining her reputation and that I had no right to invade her privacy. She told me I was crazy for suspecting her of cheating, that I was imagining things because I was insecure about losing her. But I didn't buy any of it. I knew her too well, or so I thought. The emotional toll was brutal. Every time I saw her, I felt this mix of anger and sadness. I was angry because she betrayed me in the worst way possible, cheating, stealing, and then lying about it. I was sad because I still loved her, or at least I thought I did. I kept replaying our last real conversations, wondering if I'd missed the signs or if I'd been blind the whole time. Now, looking back, I realized I'd ignored some pretty obvious clues. Her secretive phone habits, the late nights, the sudden expensive shopping sprees, and her dismissive attitude whenever I asked about her whereabouts. One night, I decided to confront her again, this time more forcefully. I told her I had everything: proof of her affair, her theft, and her lies. I told her I was filing for divorce, and I was going to fight her for every penny, every inch of that house and her claim to my inheritance. Her reaction was a mix of anger and panic. She yelled that I was ruining her life, that I was a jealous, insecure bastard who didn't deserve her. She said she'd fight me, that she'd take everything I had, and she'd make sure I paid for accusing her of things she didn't do. Her words stung, but I knew I had to stay calm. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I also started looking into the legal side of things. I knew she'd try to claim half the house, even though I'd always thought it was mine. We had a prenup, but she'd been claiming it was invalid because of some supposed coercion. I knew I had to be prepared for a fight in court. I contacted a family law attorney who specialized in divorce and property disputes. She told me that, given what I had, proof of the affair, the stolen money, and her attempt to run away, there was a strong case to argue that she had no claim to the house or my inheritance. Still, I knew she'd do everything to try and win, so I had to be ready. In the meantime, I reached out to a private investigator I knew. I needed to find out exactly what Lisa was doing, who she was talking to, and where she might be hiding. I didn't trust her to just disappear quietly. Sure enough, the investigator uncovered that she'd been staying at a luxury hotel downtown, supposedly covering her tracks, but I knew she was planning her escape. She was trying to set herself up somewhere far away, maybe with Marcus, maybe just trying to cut all ties, but I was one step ahead of her now. This whole process was draining. Every day I felt like I was losing more of my sanity. The betrayal cut deep and the money loss made it worse. I was furious at her for stealing from us, our future, our security. And I was furious at Marcus for seducing her, for encouraging her to betray everything we'd built. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I could have been so blind. But I knew dwelling on that wouldn't help. I had to focus on what was next, fighting to get my money back, protecting what was left of my life, and making sure she didn't walk away with everything. I also started privatizing my feelings. I told a few close friends what had happened, people I trusted, and they told me I was a damn fool to stay with her after all she'd done. But I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing she'd broken me completely. I was already planning my next moves. I was going to confront her in court, and I was going to fight for every dollar, every piece of property, and every ounce of dignity I had left. Because at the end of the day, I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let her win. By now, I was fully immersed in the chaos she'd unleashed. The more I dug, the clearer it became just how deep her deception went. The money she stole wasn't just for her escape. It was a calculated move to wipe us out financially and start fresh somewhere she thought she could hide. That realization fueled my determination. I wasn't just fighting for the money or the house. I was fighting to reclaim my dignity, my life, and whatever shred of self-respect I had left. I scheduled a meeting with my lawyer again. We went over all the evidence I'd gathered, especially the bank statements showing the withdrawals, the texts confirming her affair, and the fact that she'd been planning her departure for weeks. My lawyer explained that, legally, I had a strong case to freeze her assets and prevent her from liquidating any more of what was ours. She also told me that, despite her claims of the prenup being invalid, I might have a good shot at keeping the house since it was bought before marriage and I'd been the primary breadwinner. But none of that mattered if I didn't act fast. Lisa, of course, refused to accept any responsibility. She doubled down on her lies, claiming she was innocent, that she loved me, and that I was just jealous and insecure. She said she'd never cheat on me, never steal from me, and that I was just paranoid because I didn't understand her. The thing is, I knew she was lying, and I didn't care anymore whether she believed her own lies. What mattered was that I had proof, solid proof, and I was going to use it to fight her in court. One day, I caught her trying to make one last run, packing a small bag, her phone glued to her hand, looking over her shoulder like she was afraid someone was watching. I remember standing in the doorway, watching her, feeling this surge of rage and disappointment. I told her to stop right there, that I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything. That's when she started crying, claiming she was just leaving to clear her head, that she loved me, and that Marcus was just a business associate. Yeah, right. I didn't buy a word of it. I knew she was lying. She'd been planning her exit for weeks, maybe months. It was at that moment I realized I couldn't just rely on legal documents and evidence. I needed to act decisively. I contacted a forensic accountant who specialized in tracking stolen money. I wanted to find out exactly where that $250 went. The accountant uncovered some interesting details: large transfers to offshore accounts, investments in high-end art, and even some suspicious property purchases in her name. It was clear she was trying to hide her trail, but I had enough to show she'd intentionally siphoned off the money to fund her escape. Meanwhile, I decided to confront her once more, this time with my lawyer present. I sat her down, laid out all the evidence, and told her I was going to fight her for every penny and every asset she thought she could claim. I told her she had no right to take what wasn't hers, especially after betraying me so thoroughly. That was the moment she snapped. She shouted, called me a jealous, controlling husband, and accused me of trying to ruin her life. She said I was just bitter because I was losing everything. That's when I realized she was trying to spin the story, make herself out to be the victim. But I knew the truth, and I was ready to fight for it. The legal battle was heating up. My lawyer filed for a temporary injunction to freeze her assets and prevent her from leaving the state. We also started the process to declare the stolen money as part of the marital estate. Though she'd already hidden most of it, I was confident we could trace enough to recover some. I also hired a process server to serve her divorce papers. I knew she was planning to hide or liquidate assets, so I had to act fast. Every day that passed, I felt more like I was losing control, but I refused to give up. One night, I found out she'd been secretly communicating with Marcus. Her phone pinged with messages, more explicit stuff, plans to meet, promises to run away together. I couldn't believe how far she'd gone. It was like she didn't care about anything anymore: our marriage, the money, the life we'd built. All she cared about was her new life with Marcus, no matter what it cost me. And here's the kicker: she started claiming I was the one who was abusive, jealous, and controlling, that I was the reason she had to cheat and steal. She told her friends I was an ogre, that she was just a victim of my supposed insecurities. That was her new narrative. It made me sick. I knew I had to counter that with real evidence, with witnesses, with everything I had. I wasn't going down without a fight. Looking back, I realize how quickly everything turned upside down. One moment I was married, happy and secure. The next I was fighting to save what little I had left. I was angry and hurt, but I also knew I had to stay strong. The game wasn't over yet. The courtroom battle was looming, and I was determined to come out on top, because if I didn't fight for myself now, I knew she'd take everything. And I'd never forgive myself for letting her get away with it. The courtroom showdown was approaching faster than I expected. I had spent weeks gathering every shred of evidence I could find: bank statements, text messages, emails, even witness testimonies from friends who saw her leaving with Marcus or heard her talk about leaving me. I'd also hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her, and his reports confirmed she was actively trying to hide assets, moving money offshore, and planning her escape route. I felt like I was fighting a losing battle, but I knew I couldn't back down now. The day I officially filed for divorce, I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. Relief because I finally took control, and dread because I knew how bitter this fight would get. Lisa didn't take it well. She accused me of being a controlling, paranoid husband who was just jealous because I'd lost my mind over her innocent friendship with Marcus. She spun stories about how I was trying to ruin her reputation, how I was just insecure about losing my perfect wife. It was classic gaslighting, and honestly, it made my blood boil. I knew better, knew that her claims were lies designed to distract from the real issue: her betrayal, theft, and her attempt to run away with Marcus. I remember sitting in the courtroom during the first hearing. I could feel my heart pounding, knowing that she'd do everything possible to twist the facts, to manipulate the judge, to make it seem like I was the bad guy. She showed up dressed to impress, with that bitchy smirk on her face, trying to look innocent. But I had my evidence. I had witnesses. I knew I was on solid ground. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a long, exhausting battle. Her lawyer tried to argue that she deserved half the house because we were married for years, and that her contributions, both emotional and financial, were equal to mine. But I had the prenup, and I had proof that I was the primary breadwinner. Plus, the house was bought before we got married, and I had paid most of the mortgage. I argued that her theft of the $250, $0 in her affair, voided any claims she had to our assets. The judge listened carefully, and I could see the wheels turning in his head. I knew I had a good shot, but I also knew Lisa would pull out all the stops to win. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act, crying fake tears and claiming she was the victim of my controlling behavior. She said I was abusive, jealous, and that I'd driven her to cheat and steal because I didn't understand her. She insisted that Marcus was just a friend, and that all her actions were innocent. It was disgusting to watch her lie so effortlessly, as if she believed her own bullshit. I wanted to scream at her, to tell the court how she'd lied, cheated, and stolen from me. But I kept my composure. I knew that every lie she told was another reason I had to keep fighting. The judge ordered a forensic audit of her finances, and I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we'd find enough evidence to recover some of that stolen money. The investigators' reports showed suspicious transfers to offshore accounts, investments in luxury items, and real estate in her name. It was clear she was trying to hide her assets, but I knew the trail wasn't completely cold. I also learned she'd been trying to buy her way out of the mess, making hush-money deals with Marcus, paying off some debts, and even trying to buy a new identity. It was desperation, but also dangerous. I had to act fast. One day I caught her trying to sneak out of the house again. She was packing her bags, looking frantic, texting Marcus. I confronted her face to face. I told her I knew everything about her affair, her theft, her plans to run, and that I wasn't going to let her get away with it. She started crying, claiming she'd been forced into a corner, that she loved Marcus and only wanted a fresh start. She begged me to let her go, to forgive her, but I was beyond that now. I told her she had no choice but to face the consequences of her actions, and that I was going to make sure she paid for what she'd done. The final hearing was brutal. Lisa's lawyer tried to argue that she deserved half the house because I was controlling and abusive, and that she'd contributed equally to our life together. But I had the evidence, proof of her affair, her theft, her plans to disappear. I presented every document, every witness, every piece of damning proof I had. It was intense, and I could see her losing her composure as the judge looked over everything. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor on most issues, awarding me full control of the house, dismissing her claims to half my inheritance, and declaring that her theft was a clear violation of our marriage agreement. But the victory was bittersweet. Even though I'd won legally, the emotional scars ran deep. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and exhausted. The woman I'd loved and trusted had turned into someone I barely recognized. The money was gone, her lies had destroyed what we had, and I was left picking up the pieces of a life I thought was secure. I knew I'd never fully recover from this, but I also knew I had to move forward. Still, part of me wondered if she'd ever truly face the consequences of her actions, if she'd pay for her lies and theft, or if she'd just walk away, leaving me to pick up the wreckage. That's the thing about betrayal. It leaves scars that never fully heal. After the court's decision, I thought I'd finally get some peace. I was wrong. Lisa's bitterness didn't end in the courtroom. If anything, it got worse. She refused to accept the outcome, constantly calling me, texting, trying to manipulate the situation. She claimed that I'd cheated her out of her rights, that I'd ruined her life with my paranoia, and that she'd fight me every step of the way. I could tell she was trying to turn her lies into a narrative that painted her as the victim, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I'd seen too much, heard too many lies, and I knew what she was capable of. She started making accusations about me, things I knew weren't true. She claimed I'd been abusive, that I'd yelled at her and controlled her every move. She told anyone who'd listen that I was a jealous monster who kept her from having a life. It was classic smear campaign tactics, and it infuriated me. I knew she was trying to destroy what little reputation I had left. I kept quiet, letting her spin her stories because I knew the truth, and I had the evidence to back it up. Meanwhile, the money situation remained complicated. The forensic accountant had traced some of her offshore accounts, but a lot of the money was gone, hidden in ways I couldn't reach. I filed a claim to recover some of the stolen funds, but I knew that, even if I succeeded, it wouldn't replace the years of trust she'd shattered. I also had my lawyer push for an order to seize her assets and freeze any remaining accounts she might try to access. I wanted to make sure she couldn't just walk away with whatever she had left. One day, I finally decided I had to confront her face to face. She had been staying with her parents, trying to lay low, but I knew she was planning her next move. I went to her house and knocked on the door. When she saw me, her face twisted into a mixture of fury and guilt. I told her I was done playing her game, that I was taking everything I could, my house, my inheritance, and her claims to whatever she thought she deserved. I told her she had no right to steal from me, to lie, or to betray me like this. I made it clear that I wasn't going to let her manipulate or destroy me anymore. She started crying, claiming she was sorry, that she'd made a huge mistake and that she loved me. But I knew better. Her tears were fake, just another part of her manipulative act. I told her I didn't want her apologies, didn't want her lies. I was done. I'd already moved on mentally, at least I was trying to. But I also knew I had to protect myself financially. I started the process of changing all my bank accounts, closing joint accounts, and securing my assets. I didn't trust her not to try to take more. The most startling thing happened when I hired a forensic investigator to look into her recent activities. Turns out, she'd been trying to open new accounts in her name, trying to set herself up somewhere far away. She'd even booked flights to another state, possibly planning to disappear entirely. The investigator found her plans to buy a small house, change her identity, and start over. I felt like I'd been punched again. I realized she was serious about leaving everything behind, me, our life, our future. That realization made me more determined than ever to cut ties. I reported her to the authorities for the theft, and I worked with my lawyer to make sure she couldn't just walk away with the money or the house. She was furious, calling me every name in the book, threatening to sue me for everything I had. But I knew I had enough evidence to fight back. I wasn't going to let her ruin me completely. I had to protect myself, my assets, and whatever was left of my dignity. Looking back, I see how naive I was to believe that love could fix everything. The betrayal changed everything. How I see trust, how I see marriage, how I see people I once thought I knew. The worst part, the fact that she lied so convincingly, manipulated everyone around her, and still tries to spin her story as the victim. I won't lie, it's been incredibly painful. But I've learned a lot about myself, about the importance of safeguarding my life, and about how some people are just plain selfish. I'm still healing, still trying to piece everything back together. The house is now fully mine, the court battle is over, and I've started rebuilding my life from scratch. But I'll admit, I wake up some mornings angry, remembering her lies, her betrayal, and the fact that I was so blind. If I could give anyone advice, it would be this: don't ignore the signs, trust your instincts, and never let anyone steal your peace or your money just because you love them. Because once trust is broken, it's nearly impossible to fix everything. Now I sit here, reflecting on everything that's happened, and I realize how much I've been through. The betrayal, the theft, the lies, everything hit me like a freight train, and honestly, I sometimes wonder how I survived it all without completely losing my mind. I used to think I knew who Lisa was, but that was an illusion I clung to for years. Turns out, she was never really the woman I thought she was. She was a manipulative, selfish bitch who saw me as nothing more than a stepping stone to her own happiness at any cost. Looking back, I see how she played me from the start. The subtle signs I ignored, those late nights, the secretive texts, the way she dismissed my concerns, were all part of her plan. I was blind because I loved her, because I wanted to believe in the fairy tale. But the truth is, she was never committed. She was only ever in it for herself, for Marcus, for the money she stole, and for the thrill of betraying everything we built together. The worst part isn't even the money or the house. It's the loss of trust, trust I thought was unbreakable. It's the way she lied and manipulated everyone around her, trying to make herself the victim. I realize now that some people are just inherently selfish, incapable of genuine love or loyalty. And I learned that sometimes the hardest thing to do is to walk away and rebuild from the ashes. Despite all this, I've come out of it stronger. I've learned to be more cautious, more aware of red flags, and most importantly, more protective of myself. I've started therapy to deal with the emotional scars, and I'm slowly learning how to trust again, though I know I'll never fully forget what happened. The pain will always be there, lurking under the surface, but I refuse to let it consume me. I want anyone reading this to know that betrayal cuts deep, but it's also a lesson. You can't control other people's actions, but you can control how you respond. Stand up for yourself, protect your assets, listen to your gut. And most importantly, never settle for less than you deserve. Because if you let someone take everything, Your money, your trust, your happiness, they'll do it if you let them. And once it's gone, it's almost impossible to get back. So I move forward now, cautiously but determined. I've closed that chapter of my life and I'm focused on rebuilding what I lost, better, wiser, and more aware of what real loyalty looks like. I don't wish her any ill, but I won't let her ruin me either. I've learned my lesson the hard way, and I hope anyone else out there facing betrayal will take this as a warning. Trust carefully, protect fiercely, and never forget that your own happiness and security come first.